Alan and I have been training partners for a few years. Our race times are very similar, but for some reason in training, I'm eating his dust a lot. When I'm not, it's because the temperatures are above 25 degrees, which seems to be when we're better matched training partners because Alan suffers a little bit in the heat, so it's kind of an advantage for me. That's probably why I find marathon training with Alan easier in the summer. I can actually keep up. I often wonder if I'm just not being tough enough in training. But then I either get injured or start feeling like a zombie dragging my feet through every run. Today's book might shed some light on whether I need more grit or if some restraint and better following the spirit of the workout would help me run better in the longer distances. Hi, and welcome to the Running Book Reviews podcast, where we review books written for runners, about runners, and by runners to help you decide if you would like to read the book for yourself. We also hope that listening to us chat about running can help keep you motivated about your own running or maybe inspire you to try something new. My name is Liz, and with my co-host Alan, we're going to talk with author Matt Fitzgerald about his new book, Chasing Mastery.
Chasing Mastery is a guide developed to help athletes master their running through 25 lessons grouped under 5 pillars. Oh, very convenient, Matt. Five, five groups and 5 things in each group.
It's always so
Beautiful
well thought out like
symmetry.
that.
Yes.
The 5 pillars, we won't go into all 25 lessons, but the 5 pillars are motivation, learning, understanding, individuation, which I didn't even know that was a word, so that'll be a discussion, no doubt, and challenge. As you can probably tell by the pillars, the book's not really a training plan. It's meant to help you think more critically about the training you're doing so that you can get closer to reaching your own potential as an athlete. Chasing Mastery is also an online course that coaches and athletes can take through the 80/20 educational platform. We're really talking about the book here, but I'm sure we can touch on that if that's still around. Let me tell you a little bit about Matt. If you haven't come across Matt, where have you been? You've been
Basically, you
hiding
haven't
under
been
a
listening
rock.
to the
You
podcast, that's for
certainly haven't been
sure.
listening to the podcast, and you haven't been browsing the running bookstore. Matt became a runner at the age of 11 after running the last mile of the 1983 Boston Marathon with his father, who had run the whole thing, and his 2 brothers. By that time, Matt was already a writer, specifically a comedic poet, having declared his intention to make his future career as a writer at the age of 9. And I guess he's never changed his mind. He has since written over 30 books. We've stopped trying to get the precise number of books that Matt's done because,
Too many.
yeah, basically it goes out of date too quickly. About endurance sports and things related to endurance sports, and started his own publishing company called 80/20 Publishing. Matt is also a coach, nutritionist, public speaker, and founder of Dream Run Camp, a place where runners can go to train like the pros. Most notable of Matt's accomplishment is the fact that he's been on Running Book Reviews numerous times. Liz's notes actually says 7 times, but
I
I feel
counted.
I
I
can't
mean,
believe that.
well, it's because some of the books were co-authored, so he was on like with another author. But yes, seven
Okay.
seven times.
Wow,
7 times.
fantastic. So welcome back, Matt,
It's great,
to
great to be
to
back.
the reoccurring, the revolving door that is Running Book Reviews. Basically, you're launching quite a challenge for us. Can we read them as quick as you can write them?
Sometimes the answer is no, because this
Churning them out. It's taking us a while to get to this one.
yeah, this one took us a few months. I think we got it in the
But
winter.
we'll start you off with the normal question, which is, why this book? How did you decide to write this book? And what do you mean by mastery, if we're chasing mastery?
Yes. So yeah, this is not a book I could have or would have written, 10 years ago. It's, now that I'm this deep into my, coaching and writing careers, I have a lot to look back on. And within the last few years, I've found my mind kind of revolving around this mastery concept as a summation of what I'm all about as an athlete, a coach, and I guess a teacher. Um, the way I look at it is that I'm not trying to be the best runner in the world because I can't, but I am trying to master the sport of running. And that just means reaching 100% of my potential. I like that way of framing the journey because it's very democratizing, and only one runner can be the best in the world, but any runner of any at any level of ability, any age, can master the sport. Um, so if you have a lot of potential, you can be the best runner in the world. If you have limited potential, which is all of us, you can still reach your full potential. Just to be able to say, hey, I've gotten to be as good at the sport as I can possibly be by working hard at it, by making a lot of good decisions. So that's the journey I'm on as an athlete. That is also how I view my role as a coach. Athletes, when I start working with them, they kind of expect to like me to show kind of favoritism to my fastest or most gifted or youngest athletes, and I just don't, because I don't care. I don't care about talent. I care about improvement and the journey toward mastery. And then just as an author as well, if you look back at the six previous books we've talked about on this show and others I've written, you can see that's a through line in everything I do. It's all about I think everyone who has a passion for running and is kind of performance minded, wants to improve by the numbers, has a ticket to the same ride, and the ride is movement toward mastery of the sport.
And is this movement to mastery, is that what's kept you sort of motivated? Because, you had long COVID and you've talked about it before, but that has been, a journey of a few years. And, it can be easy to just throw in the towel and be like, yeah, this running thing, it's no longer for me. But it sounds like, you kind of made it through. And so was it this whole mastery concept that kind of kept you moving forward?
It certainly helped. It's not that different from even aging without chronic illness. A lot of runners, as you mentioned in intro, I started running competitively when I was 11 years old. And, every runner who stays in the sport gets to the point where they've set their last PR. And they start slowing down, and a lot of runners, when they get that point, they ask, what's the point, and they move on to pickleball or whatever. But if you have that if you have that mastery,
I wonder if
uh,
Guillaume's listening. Been giving him a lot of stick. One of our a very fast runner actually. Been giving him a lot of stick because he's playing pickleball.
right on, nothing wrong with pickleball, I'm not hating. But if you have that mastery orientation, then it doesn't bother you at all when aging starts to slow you down, because
Hmm.
you're measuring improvement in different ways. So you can be, let's say I'm 54 years old. So you can be 54, having started when you were 11, and run a race and say, wow, I dug deeper in this race than I ever have before. Like it wasn't a PR because I'm 54, but I improved in like maybe not a quantifiable way, but a substantive way, a way that matters. Or, you know, like that was the best tactical race I've ever run. Wasn't a PR, but you know what I mean? I got closer to being able to look back at the race and say, like, there's not one thing I could have done differently that would have eked out another second. That is very, very satisfying. Or you can look back at the training cycle that led up to it and say, you know what? Through reflecting on all of my experience, I've gotten closer to optimizing my personal training formula than I ever did before. So maybe my PR was 10 years ago, but I actually wasn't training optimally then. And I've learned a lot in those 10 years. So I'm doing more with less at this age. So, if you factor in long COVID, I was writing a blog post for my Substack where I kind of discussed this, and I mentioned, like, I'm almost glad I have a chronic illness at this stage of my journey, because I feel like I'm close enough to mastering the sport where I don't mind. I relish fighting with one arm tied behind my back, because I just feel like I have all this experience, all this knowledge, all this learning, all this self knowledge, all this growth I've achieved through the sport. And so, when I have like special limitations that just make it harder and more challenging, that's a chance. When everything's going your way, you don't get a chance to prove your mastery, but when things are stacked against you, you do, and there can be a lot of fulfillment in that.
And I guess optimally you never achieve mastery and you never feel you one, you go, well, would I ever run a race where I said, well, I did
Right.
100.0000000
Yeah.
of the stuff that I could have
Yep.
done to get the result that I got?
Yep.
And you'll go, well, no,
No.
this perfection kind of doesn't exist, and the sport's moving on, so it's a moving feast.
Yes.
And I guess to that point, to have chasing mastery as the
Right.
title
Yes.
is eminently sensible.
Yep. Yeah. I don't think you can stop moving toward mastery unless you stop learning. If you're learning, you're moving.
Do you take caffeine when you run? Lots of people do because it's in gels and stuff. And caffeine's legal and it's been proven to work. There's actual science that shows that it improves your endurance running performance.
And there's anecdotal data from when you have your coffee in the morning and you go for a workout versus when you forgot to have your coffee or you didn't have time and you went for a workout and it was terrible.
And the trouble with coffee is there's a lot of liquid just to get your caffeine dose.
Yeah, so then you have to stop for the bathroom mid-workout. Very impractical. Which is where Caffeine Bullet comes in.
What's caffeine bullet, Liz?
It's a caffeine supplement. It's wrapped up like in a candy. So, and it tastes like candy. And you can get 100 milligrams or 85 milligrams, which is about a cup of coffee, but without the liquid.
So we've tried the mint flavor and the chocolate orange flavor, and they're both pretty yummy.
If you want to try them for yourself, we do have a 20% off discount code. So go to the link in the show notes and you can check out what Caffeine Bullet is and get your 20% discount.
Pretty generous.
It is pretty generous.
And we'll get a small benefit, so you're helping out the
Speaking of which, back to the podcast. So before we jump into like the pillars, the book has 5 pillars, but do athletes need to necessarily go from pillar one like chronologically through, or can they do them in a different order? What's the best thing?
Yeah. I'm going to give you a squishy answer to that. It's kind of both. You know, what I'm doing in this book is looking at the endurance sports journey as a developmental process. So, the first time you ever go out and run, you're at, step zero of a developmental process. And, if you stay in the sport, you start to develop. And we tend to think of development in physical terms. I'm talking about like overall, like athlete development versus athletic development. And it is sequential in a sense. So you know any youth sports coach will tell you that their number one priority, after protecting the health and safety and well-being of their young athletes, is to instill a love of the sport. Why is that the case? Because when you're at the beginning of the developmental journey, what is the number one thing standing in the way of you reaching 100% of your potential? And we all have to agree, like that's not an overnight thing. It's going to take no matter who you are, it's going to take some years to fully realize your potential. So if you're at the very beginning of that process, what's the number one thing you need in order to continue? It's motivation. Like, if you just pick a
Yeah.
random runner off the street and ask, like, what does it take to reach your full potential, they'll say, oh yeah, good training. It's like, well, that
Mhm.
training's never going to happen if you're
If
not
you're not
motivated. Like,
motivated.
Yeah.
yeah, just loving the sport and being
Yeah.
dedicated and wanting to commit to do the work is foundational. So yeah, it's just like a matter of like, what is your prepotent or salient need, to throw a bunch of vocabulary words at you, at any given time in the journey. So yeah, like motivation comes first, and I think learning really does come second, because there's so much to learn, even in a sport that's as simple as running. When I started running when I was 11, I was self-guided, and so I just went by my own 11-year-old wits, and I was an idiot. I ran 6 miles every other day and tried to PR for 6 miles every time I ran, and that lasted a week before I hit a dead end. So there's a lot to learn. So
I
that
know some
that
big ass grown-ups who do that.
yeah, yes, yeah, totally. Yeah, it doesn't really matter how old you are. Like if you're a beginner and you're just, going by intuition, you're going to screw up left and right, even if you're a genius.
I think because initially the motivation comes from, oh, I ran faster than last time.
Right.
And then you try and recreate that so that you can
Yes.
stay
Yeah.
motivated.
And you die. Yes,
Yes.
basically.
So yeah, there's like a natural sequence to this developmental process. That being said, yeah, you can work on all of these pillars simultaneously, and you kind of should. It's just a matter of like which one's getting the highest priority
Yeah.
at a given time.
Yeah, your chat actually sends me back many years ago when I started to run with for the very first time with my children. And I had my youngest girl, she was doing her first 1K cross country, and daddy's allowed to run with Susie because she's so small. And this is younger than 11, certainly, probably, you know, 9 or 10. Um, and my tactic with her was, okay, see all these people that you're running with, all these kids. We're not going off at their pace. We're going off nice and easy. We're going to be tactically smart, and we let everybody run away, and we just trotted along. And 1K was a long way for her. And after 300 meters or 200 meters, you start past the kids who launch themselves like rockets. And I was going, see, we're passing a few people, and this is our game. And then when we got near the end, I said, okay, see those people up ahead? Do you think you've got the energy left to catch them up? See what you can do. And she sprinted the last, I don't know, 100 meters, past another five people, and probably came 75% down the field, but felt like a superhero.
Mhm.
And after that, she was just super motivated about, oh, I know how to run and let's go running. And yeah. And now she's a 30-year-old gym owner. And, we ran a marathon together and she's throwing down at half marathons and stuff just for funsies. And
Nice.
I just thought I would give the story into the podcast because it reminded me suddenly of
Yeah.
that story.
I think actually that's a good segue to one of my questions because we're talking about motivation and part of motivation is like you have to love the sport, which means you have to have fun, but running is hard. And Matt, you have a nice term in the book called hard fun.
Mhm.
So tell us about hard fun. What's hard fun and how do you get some of that feeling of hard fun?
Yeah. So yeah, just for a little context, what I'm talking about at the outset of that lesson is the idea that one of the sources of motivation for runners is evidence that you're improving, that training is working. Because it's not like you can just like train hard for a week and then take the rest of the month off. Like
Hmm.
you just have to keep getting out there, day after day after day. And if you're a psychologically normal person, like you're not going to keep doing that if the training isn't working, or if you don't know that it is working. We all need evidence, but that need for evidence can be a little bit difficult to satisfy, and there are like more and less helpful ways of looking for proof that you're improving. The obvious thing is like the numbers. 11-year-old Matt going out and
Hmm.
trying to PR for 6 miles every time. Like that's an ineffective way of like, because you're actually what too many runners do is they try to force the evidence that they're looking for. And you can do that to a point, right? Like you do an easy run that's not quite as easy as the last one, and then, oh look, my average pace is better. Yeah, because you worked harder, not
Hmm.
because you're
Not
fitter.
because you're
um
fitter.
Hmm.
yeah. So kind of like that over and over again, it's like that outcome focus that looks past the process is what gets runners into trouble. So hard fun is my way of infusing proof that training is working into the process. So you don't fall into what I call the progress trap, which is where you're forcing it. So it's subjective, and in our technology saturated 2025 world, we tend to think of like perceptions and feelings as like unscientific and low tech and
Hmm.
therefore unreliable. But ironically, science itself tells us that certain subjective perceptions and feelings are more reliable, are more predictive of outcomes than anything your device is going to tell you. And that's where the hard fun test comes in. So the question really is like, ask yourself on any given day. You don't have to wait for a VO2 max test. Like on any given day, you can ask yourself, generally speaking, like not today, but generally speaking, how hard is my training, and how much fun am I having in my training? And the idea is like, if your training is hard and fun in equal measure, your training is working. Why is that the case? Because the hard part, you can measure your training load objectively, and we all do. Like, how many
Hmm.
miles did I run this week? How many hours did I spend running? Like, what was my average intensity? All that. But guess what? Like, the harder you train, it's not like you're asleep or in a coma. Like, you feel it. So like, the higher your training load is, you can ask a runner at any given time. If you're early base training, you ask, how hard is your training? Not very. If you're in the thick of a marathon build, how hard is your training? Quite hard. So and what studies have shown is like that those self-assessments of affective load are actually more accurate in indicating how hard you are truly training physiologically, and so there's a sweet spot, there's a Goldilocks zone. If the training isn't hard enough, then you're not improving, and if it's too hard, you're overreaching and probably teeing yourself up for an injury or overreaching. And the thing is, like, for runners, we're not like personal trainer clients who just would really rather not be there. We like hard, we
Hmm.
like, and so the hard and the fun, they go together, because if the training isn't hard enough to stimulate improvement, you're not going to be enjoying the process. It has to be hard enough. But if it's so hard that your body isn't able to absorb it, then actually, the number one most reliable early indicator that you are heading into overreaching is loss of motivation. So forget your HRV or whatever. Just like, if you're starting to dread the next run, it's a good indication that you're overreaching. And so it's too hard, and therefore the fun starts to be bled out of it. But also the fun part, the enjoyment part is obviously it's tied together with the affective training load, the hard part, but it's also semi-independent too. So let's just say that your training is at an appropriate level of hardness. There are still things you can do to make it more fun, and that's not just a nice feeling. The more fun you're having, the more you're going to invest of yourself into the process, and then the more returns you're going to get from it. So like running in beautiful places, running with people you enjoy running with, running with or without music, depending on what your preferences are. Like all these factors, all these levers you can pull to just increase the enjoyment of what you're already doing anyway, will lead to just some more effective overall training process. So that's hard fun in a nutshell.
What about for those people that, because I know you've mentioned this for yourself and you mentioned it in the book, that y you for a long time had a fear of discomfort. So, that whole hard fun, I guess maybe like in that case, hard fun will exist, but the hard will be less hard kind of thing. But you kind of need to be able to push yourself to the point of enduring discomfort in a race so that you can maybe get that PR or come closer to your potential on the day. Somebody that does have a fear of discomfort, what can they do about it? Is there anything else that runners are commonly afraid of that maybe also destroys their motivation?
Well, yes. I mean, I think fear can be motivating, but if you're being chased
Yeah.
by a bear,
Yeah, that's good motivation. Yep.
you'll never run faster. But more than a little fear of most kinds tends to sap motivation. And
So there's like a sweet spot.
yeah, getting back to the first half of your question, like the discomfort thing, there's a distinction to be made between like acute and chronic hard. So yeah, with this whole like Norwegian method that's going on right now, like that's all
Yeah.
about like keeping some powder dry every day, like never really going or seldom really going deep into the pain cave and training. Like everything is like calculated and controlled. And what makes training quote unquote hard is not like what you do on any given day. It's the total body of work that you're doing. And that's really what I'm getting at with the hard fun test. Like not how hard was today's
Okay.
incinerating, laps on the track, but like, like in the last week, the last 4 weeks of training, like how challenging is it? And it's not the harder the better. It's the Goldilocks zone where it's like, it's challenging but not overwhelming. That's where you want to be. And if you get past day one of running, then you probably have some kind of appetite for that like chronic hard. Now, that there's still a lot of fine tuning that can be done. A lot of people, they're not going to do a second run if they have a complete distaste for the kind of hard
Yeah.
that running
I,
administers.
I guess at our level, I hear this kind of conversation quite regularly, where you're kind of probably warming up to do a training, which is listed as something that's quite intimidating, or you're going to a race and you haven't raced for a while, or you're going with your friends who don't race very often. And there's a conversation that goes on, which is, oh, I don't know that I'm gonna push too
Yes.
hard.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I'm ready. Or
Hmm.
there's all of this. There's all of this kind of, I don't know, discounting that kind of
Yep.
goes on in the conversation. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I would hear this every time there's a difficult training, every time there's a
Yep.
with kind of club members, every time there's a race. Oh, I don't think I'm going to be able to go full send today or
Hmm.
whatever. I
Yep.
go, look, the gun's going to go off. And you're going to give everything you got, probably. That's just how it's going to happen.
Yes.
Why do people do that? And are they kind of protecting their psyche or
Yeah, I mean,
what?
I call that phenomenon race day cold feet.
Okay.
And yeah, I've seen it plenty. I've experienced it myself in the past. Yeah, it's just normal. Yeah, I mean, like your lizard brain is always operating behind the scenes. So,
Mm,
to be a runner, you are like overriding your lizard brain
yeah.
daily. Your lizard
Yeah.
brain just wants to lie in a hammock with a glass of iced tea. And like the higher levels of your
That's
consciousness
just
want to strive as a runner.
so my standard response should be, ah, that's just your amygdala talking.
Yes.
Don't listen to it.
Yes. But I do think, I mean, let's be honest. It's the Nate, and I get into this in the book as well. What limits endurance performance is perception. When you're out running a
Hmm.
marathon and you're 8 miles in, and I ask you, could you run faster? The answer is yes. When you're 16 miles into a marathon, if I ask you, could you run faster? The answer is yes. It's like you're never trying as hard as you can in endurance races
Hmm.
until you're very, very deep into it. But the deeper you get into any sustained effort, the more discomfort you're going to be carrying. And we have those hardwired instincts that are going to start screaming at us. But because the limit of performance is perceptual, you are deliberately holding back, based largely on perceptions. Every time you're running, the more discomfort you can tolerate, the better you're going to perform, because perceptual limits are real, but they're also mutable. They're unlike something like if your core body temperature gets to 104, 105 degrees Fahrenheit. I
Yeah.
don't know what that is in
You're
Celsius.
you're a bit
Like,
stuck. Yeah.
yeah, your body will shut down involuntarily. Nothing you can do about it. But like perceived exertion, which is the term for the kind of discomfort that we're experiencing, in races and hard workouts, that's a real limit, but it is mutable. I mean, there are all kinds of ways you can manipulate perceived effort to get more performance out of yourself, but one of them is just to increase your tolerance. So if you if you let the amygdala win, and you give in to race day cold feet, you're just leaving performance on the table, and that's a personal decision. But for me as a coach, I like to see athletes, not in a ham-fisted kind of David Goggins kind of way, but like in just a practical way, like what this is something we can and should work on, like increasing your tolerance for this type of discomfort, because guess what, if you do that, if you pull that lever, you will perform at a higher level.
Is there anything to do with racing that you can do more of? Because for sure, like you'll never really push as hard in a training run. I mean, some of the training runs can be hard. I'm
Yeah.
thinking of lactate thresholds for me; those are like arch nemesis.
Yeah.
But yeah, like is racing more a solution?
Potentially, yes. Yeah. So, I mean, short races. I think us just say I think maybe all of us on this call are like more marathon, and for me, marathon and beyond focused. So I mean, you can only run so many marathons, at a high level.
Hmm.
Um, so so I mean, it's hard to like go out and run a marathon as practice for running a marathon, but 5K is absolutely,
Mm.
you can pack a lot of pain into a 5K and just get some valuable practice that you can then apply,
Yeah.
in longer races. So yes to that. I mean, you have to be careful. You don't want to over race, but that can be a tool. There's also stuff you can do in training. You can give yourself exposure to intense discomfort in small doses in training. So you could just like do a set of intervals, and then the last one is all out. Now, it might be a 2 minute effort. So it's a very painful 2 minutes. But it's over with very quickly. And, you wake up the next morning and, you don't feel any worse because opened up the throttle for those 2 minutes.
Hmm.
But, you got to experience that and prove something to yourself. And, it doesn't have to happen all in one day. But if you kind of like make a conscious commitment to, work on your pain or your, perceived exertion tolerance, you can make progress.
Have you read the book, the science fiction book, June?
I have not.
It brought in the discussion about discomfort and fear, brought in mind that there's in the movie and in the book specifically, they're taught some of the stars of the show are taught a thing called a litany against fear. It's kind of a mantra.
Mhm.
Um, I'll just read it to you for fun. It's short.
Nice.
I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. That's kind of a little mantra that I use sometimes if I get
Mhm.
into to nerves. I tend not to have fear around running these days. Nervousness is as much
Mhm.
as I get to being an older guy, but
Alan, you've
and
just proven that you can read more running books because you obviously have time to read other things.
uh, I think I read Dune when I was 18 or something like that.
Oh.
So that was like about 50 years ago. So there you go.
I like that. I mean, there's a lot of resonance between that litany and some of the stuff I talk about in my book. I think I use there's a section heading "Fear is the enemy." Uh,
Mm.
yeah, in my book.
Yeah, you need a little bit of it, but not too much because it's like overstimulating or yeah, not good. It floods your brain with all those negative chemicals. Well, I was going to move on to learning and understanding. I feel like those two go together.
They
They're not
certainly do.
really,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Learning is kind of shallow, and understanding has depth. So, learning, like a coach can say, this is how we structure an interval workout. Let's just say you're a new runner and you don't even know what an interval is. And a coach says, you do a little easy running, then you warm up, and then you go fast, and then slow. And then, so, a coach can say, like, that's how you do it. And now go do it. And so you've learned. But
Hmm.
understanding is you understand the why behind it. You understand like the principles that inform the method, and then you can go out and design your own interval workouts,
Hmm.
or you can make sensible modifications to an interval workout. So if all you've done is learn, you're still dependent on the source of learning, and you can't do anything novel or creative. If you understand, yes, you have the information, but you're also able to manipulate the information in it kind of creatively, and in a like a problem solving way.
I remember you telling us your conversations with Ben Rosario when we were talking with you both together, and you said, "Oh, I didn't do necessarily the training he set me, but I always
Right.
respected the spirit of the
Yep.
training that he set me."
Hmm.
I.e.,
Hmm.
I understood what he was trying to get to,
Yes.
and did something that was delivering that for myself.
Yep. That's exactly it.
I guess also learning and understanding is sort of the difference between like when you assign to a new runner intervals and you make the rest a jog for the first time. I feel like new runners like they end up in this space where the jog and the interval are kind of the same pace because they think, "Oh, I have to keep jogging." And they're exhausted. So they don't jog slower. They just jog at a pace that they feel is, I don't know, respectable or whatever it is that goes through their minds. And then they end up like basically not fulfilling the spirit of their workout. But once they understand that the recovery pace is, not important, basically, then they move into, I guess, into a space where they're actually putting all the effort into their interval and they're really using their jog as just like a real recovery, I'm gonna say. Is that kind of how it works?
Yes, though I actually disagree with what you said about the recovery not being important. For me, actually, I had this happen just this past week with a runner I just started coaching who did like it was a fartlek, which is basically intervals. And I looked at the graph, and this is like I see this all the time, so I was not shocked. And the intervals were above the target zone, so he was like using every inch allowed, in terms of like the parameters. And then he was walking the first part of the recovery because he'd overcooked himself in the interval. And
Ah, okay.
what I told him is like the recovery is not filler. Like a huge part of what makes you benefit of what makes interval training beneficial is challenging your body to recover from a hard effort while you're still moving at an honest pace. So I think that the recoveries and the hard efforts are co-equal in performance. Now you'll have interval workouts where it is a passive rest, where you're trying to like just preserve the quality of the hard efforts. But I'll see, so I do see what you articulated, but I also see kind of the opposite mistake where people they overemphasize the on and they underemphasize the off
Yeah,
segments
I
of an
think it's
interval
because
workout.
we're in a running club where it's pretty common that, we're on the track and you can't tell if the runner's doing their interval or if they're doing their jog.
Yeah.
And like at the end of the run, you're doing the cool down lap and like they're all kind of running away from
Yes.
you. Yeah, so we see that a lot. So I guess it
Yep.
depends what kind of environment you're
Yep.
in.
How do you know when you should be, sucking it up, taking the hard and doing the work versus when you need to maybe, take some control and dial it back? Because you get people
That's
who
a hard
dial it
one.
back
Yep.
all the time, and you get some people who will never dial it back no matter what. And if you
Yep.
set them a target, they will view that as a minimum, and they will always try to exceed that in their paces. And
Yep.
what can you tell both of those sets of people that will help them?
Yeah, I mean that is partly where understanding, both learning and understanding come in. I mean, the learning part is like you have to know what is actually effective. Like what are best practices? What are the most successful runners in the world doing? Are they treating workouts as gospel and turning themselves inside out at any cost, no matter what the weather is, no matter what's going on inside their bodies, no matter how poorly they slept last night? Or are they like more adaptive and responsive and just using the plan as a point of departure? So I mean the goal of every day for a runner should be to make the best possible use of that day, and executing the plan to the letter is only one possibility for getting the most out of that day. So it's really just kind of intellectually lazy to pretend that we have crystal balls, and just because you plan to do something today, like that is absolutely, no matter what, the best possible use of the day. Like how could that possibly be true? Like plans are just an attempt to predict the future, and there's nothing that humans are worse at than predicting the future. So planning is important, but I mentioned my financial advisor, who was a former Marine, said we had an expression in the Marines, like a plan is a point from which to part. So yeah, you start with a plan, but your understanding is that the goal is to make the best possible use of the day. So yeah, you set out if you believe in the plan. If you slept well last night and you ate your Wheaties in the morning, and you feel like, yeah, plan A is on. Then you set out with the intent to execute it. But maybe after your warm up or whatever, you realize, you know what, actually, I mean, I see this all the time in runners at the highest levels. They'll say like, oh, I'm going to do 8 to 14 intervals today. Wow, that's a huge range. But like,
Hmm.
because they understand, like, I don't know, 8 might be the perfect number, 12 might be the perfect number, 14 might, like, but yeah, I'll figure that out on the ground. So you sort of like you kind of retreat in increments from plan A. So sometimes it's like, all right, the range was 8 to 14 and I'm doing 8 because I just don't have it today. In another scenario, it could be, I'm just going to punt this workout for tomorrow because I've got heavy legs from my last hard session, and I'm just going to do an extra easy day today. Another increment of retreat could be, you know what, I'm a little worried about this knee. So instead of doing the workout, or instead of pivoting to an easy run, I'm going to get on the bike today. All of these are ways of making the best use of the day. And the runner who, like, in their own eyes, heroically pins themselves to plan A and tries to execute it at any cost, no matter what, is just intellectually lazy. And they're just not, they're trying hard
Mm.
in body. They're not trying hard in mind to be the best runner they can be.
Or just very inexperienced, perhaps, because there are
Yes.
some
Could be,
beginners.
yep.
Yeah.
Could be that.
Yeah. What about this idea of pushing workouts? So, um, some people that I've coached do push workouts a lot. And sometimes that's a problem because they end up kind of, they're sick for 3 days and then they want to play catch up by next week, cramming them all into the same week. And so there's also that danger too. What is the best idea in terms of like how should runners approach that? I mean, like what amount of pushing is good, and then when should it just be like you're skipping that workout?
I honestly think that common sense takes you 90% of the way there. I mean, forget learning, forget understanding. Like, if you know nothing about running and you have common sense, you can look at that and say, like, that ain't going to work.
That's going to
you
be an
know,
injury in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, we,
yeah,
we were
honestly.
talking with Bill Pierce and Scott Moore about their book, Run Less, Run Faster.
Hmm.
And we asked them about, how do you decide? And they said, well, just use your common sense, Alan.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd forgotten
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
Okay, good message to everybody.
Common sense is not that common.
I think it's harder with all these sports watches. I think like a lot of people they kind of become slaves to Strava, and I think
Yeah.
like there is a good about it because at the beginning all of these devices they gamify fitness and so they get people in the door. But
Yep.
then the problem is that like they think that that's
That's the
the
objective. Yeah, to
yeah.
to get the
Yep.
to get the top score on the game. Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that came up in your book that I saw was you emphasized the positivity and the importance of racing, that it gives you something maybe that helps you at the end of the day. So why tell our listeners why it's important that they should go out and race?
Well, I mean, nobody has to. We have people who come to Dream Run Camp and are like very like avid. I mean, they're passionate enough about running to come to a running camp, and they
Mm,
don't race. But I mean, if you're treating running as a sport, then racing is the point of training. And but racing is also the enemy of training because it disrupts the process. So like, I'm often telling athletes, you can either race often or you can race well. You choose. And if you
Hmm.
want to race well, then you cannot race too often. But it's like I have a friend who's a theater actress. We just saw her perform in a play in San Diego, and like if you're a theater actor, you can rehearse all you want, and that is not necessarily going to make you a great performer. There's like the stakes are higher. It's just different.
Hmm.
When there's going to be a live audience, and if you mess up, there's no do-over. You've messed up publicly, and racing is very much the same way. I was talking to a fellow coach and giving him advice for an athlete he's coaching who's training for her first 100 miler, and he was asking like, how long should the longest run be? And I explained, no matter how long your race is, your body can only adapt to so much time on your feet. So like I never have a runner run more than 5 hours, even if they're training for a race that's going to take 24 hours, because training just becomes punishment. But I said, if you're running a race that long, I don't want to see you on your feet more than 5 hours, but I would highly recommend you do a tune up, like a short, like an ultra, but a shorter ultra. So a 50 miler or a 100K before the 100 miler. Why? Because racing is racing and it's not training. So even though you're not going to get an extra training effect from, spending 12 hours completing a 50 miler, you're going to get the experience of showtime,
Hmm.
and all that comes with it, and it's super valuable. So yeah, that's true not just for ultra runners, but for any racer. Like I'm a big fan of racing before you're ready, in a training cycle. So I mean, not too much before you're ready, but like I am myself. I'm training for a 100 miler right now. It's not until late October, and I raced a half marathon uh, Sunday before last, and it was just I hadn't raced a half marathon in 5.5 years, thanks to health issues, but it just gave me a repetition of like the whole routine, waking up early, pinning on my race number, dealing with corrals and porta potties and all that stuff. And, pushing deeper into the pain cave, pacing myself, being competitive, I was trying to win my age group, all that stuff you can only get in the racing context. So yeah, if you train until you're 100% prepared, and then race, you're actually not 100% prepared because you don't have the racing reps.
Also, you get the benefit of the race setup for your training, I guess, because
Yep.
it's like doing a half marathon before your marathon. It's kind of fun because like for once you don't have to bring your water and
Yep.
yeah, be wearing all your stuff. You could just rely on the race. And I guess that's the same thing for, if you race a 50 miler, now you don't have to have, a 30-liter pack to go out on your run so that you could
Right.
like stash all your granola bars.
Yep.
I think, yeah, for sure, racing provides a whole bunch of things that don't come from anywhere else. I did a half marathon a few weeks ago, and I was trying to run under 1:30, and I was describing to people because they said, "Oh, your pace dipped a little bit in the middle, and then it got better again towards the end." And I said, "What happened was the 1:30 bunny started to catch me up, and I started to see people around who were crowded around the 1:30 bunny. Bunny is Canadian for pacer. So the
Hmm.
pacing person for 1:30 was catching me up, and the crowd that were grouped around them started to sort of appear in my peripheral
Uh-huh.
vision. And every time that happened, I tried to dig deep and pick up my pace and get away. And I succeeded
Hmm.
eventually in getting away, and I finished in 1:29. But I could never have done that if I wasn't in the race environment. If I
Right.
was if I
Yep.
was if it was going out and going, okay, let me see if I can do a time trial and run one, I would probably have run a different type of race.
Yes. Yeah. I had a similar experience when I was preparing for this half marathon. Like I said, it's been 5.5 years, and I just did a time trial. There was this 18-year-old from London who was at Dream Run camp, and he was much fitter than me. So I said I would like to time trial like a 1:29, exactly what you were going for, and he agreed to pace me because he could just jog it.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, um, it actually ended up being harder for him than he thought it was going to be because I mean this guy's a miler, so it was just a
Yeah.
long way for him. But anyway,
Hmm.
we got out there and I got 8 miles into it, and I said his name was Woody, and I said like Woody, I'm cooked. I was on pace. I wasn't running too fast. I wasn't behind pace. I was right on pace, and I'm like, there's no way I can do this for another 5 miles. And to his credit, Woody's response to me saying I was cooked was, "No, you're not."
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, he just basically shamed me into continuing by continuing himself. He's like, I'm not going to make any adjustment. I'm just going to keep running, 651
Mm.
per mile. And I'm like, all right, well, I know I can run one more step at this pace at least. And sure enough, I ended up finishing out the last 5 miles. And when I look back at it after, I realized I was just out of practice. Like
Mm.
how I felt 8 miles into a well-paced half marathon was completely normal. It had just been so long that I was alarmed by
Hmm.
how hard
Yeah.
it was. But
Yeah.
if I hadn't done that time trial, the same thing would have happened in the half marathon
Yes.
itself. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
I wouldn't have had Woody there to tell me I wasn't cooked, and I might have fallen off my pace.
Yeah, when I was running with my previous coach, we used to like mostly, we didn't have in university, we just had cross country, so we didn't have indoor track at the time. The university now does have indoor track, but so in the winter we would kind of like we would just be training and then spring would roll around and in March the roads kind of start to be more clear and there's a race that's like well placed at the end of March where it's kind of like the first opportunity to get whether that's not going to give you a reason why you ran crappy. And we would always do that race. So he would always call it the rust buster because,
Mm-hmm.
even if there were no excuses
Yep.
regarding, footing and snow and all these
Mm-hmm.
things, like we never really performed that well at that race. And
Yeah.
it's because
Yep.
we hadn't raced since most of the time, like the last cross country race in, I don't know, end of October or
Yep.
November or something like that. And sometimes we would run a little bit of indoor track for fun, but yeah, a lot of times it was like just a reinitiation to the pain of
Yep.
racing. Maybe we can move on to the next pillar, which is interesting. It's individuation, where well, you talk about a lot of things, but one of the things that you talk about is how important it is for athletes to learn to navigate their gray zones. I mean, you didn't say it like that, but it's like training always has gray zones, even though we really want it to just be objective. Like the plan says, go out and run 3 minutes at 5K pace 8 times, and then that's what you should do. But oftentimes it doesn't work that way. Like let's say you can have it's a really windy day, for example, and half of your intervals are into the wind. So you need to like be intelligent enough to, moderate the pace so that it's the right effort and not the right pace. How do athletes get there, first of all? And then what's the role of their coach once they're there?
Yes. Is that the lesson titled "Planning in Pencil"?
Yeah, I think that was I like a little bit under planning in pencil, yeah.
So I mean, I think the important thing to understand is that to get the most out of a day's training, it takes a it's like half planning and then half improvisation, I guess, or responsive adaptiveness. So I mean, too many runners, they just want it's like the plan is what I'm going to do, and then I just do it.
That's
And
me. I love being that runner.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, it's important to understand that every single run you do is utterly unique. You are not the same runner in small degrees, in small ways you were
Hmm.
yesterday, and you're not the same runner you're going to be tomorrow. And it's the same thing with the circumstances. Like the circumstances in which you're doing that run are also unique. So there is inherent unpredictability, inherent uncertainty in every single training situation. And the smartest runners, they account for that. So um, when they go into a day's training, they understand that the plan has only gotten them halfway there, and now it's on them to just like adaptively execute the plan in a responsive, adaptive way that ensures that they get what they need from the day. That's why I love the word performance for what we do, because getting back to my friend, the theater actress, it's very much that. Like you have to, you can't just shut your brain off and like a computer, okay, the plan is the input and now the execution is the output. It's like, no, you need to be able to read the conditions, read the circumstances, read your body, not just once at the beginning of the session, but in kind of a dynamic unfolding way. You need to extemporize and perform. So the plan is like, pretty much exactly 50% of what it takes to get the most out of a day's training. The other 50% is just like mindfully just being present in the session and responsive, and so that if you're running half the reps into the wind, it's like, well, it's not complete each. I did like 10 times 1 kilometer the other day, and
Hmm.
now it was a crosswind, but like if it had been a headwind on one side, in one direction, and a tailwind in the other, I would have given myself some forgiveness on the headwind reps. It's like, okay, I was aiming to run all these in 4 minutes. It's actually going to be 3:57 for the tailwind ones and 4:03 for the headwind ones. That would be an example.
To some extent, with the individuation, like I had to look that up in the dictionary. I had to see what I thought. Oh, maybe that's a typo. Maybe he's meant to say individualization because I kind of think of
Yeah.
that word, but no, you didn't. As usual, you're grammatically
Hmm.
correct. Um,
I can't believe you doubted.
I guess quite a bit of it. Doubt everything. Doubt yourself. Um, quite a bit of it depends on having good understanding. So what you're trying to achieve. So it comes from the
Yes.
previous pillar, understanding, but also you've got to know yourself as well. Got to know yourself in general and know yourself in the moment.
Yep.
I guess that's an iterative process, an iterative ongoing process. The more you do it, the more you get knowledge, the more you're open to understanding what's going on and thinking about what's going on instead of enacting. I'm just running to my Garmin. You're
Yep.
losing an opportunity to develop your mastery because you're not thinking about yourself and the objectives.
Yes. Yeah. One thing you notice, if as I get to do, if you are present when elite runners are training, you're struck by just how actively engaged their minds are and what they're doing. Like if it's a group that there's a lot of communication, there's like all these like little tweaks they're making as they go. And it really is a kind of perfectionism. It's like, hey, here we
Mhm.
are. We're going to work hard today, and we want this session to be as close to perfect as we can possibly make it. And so like, yeah, they're communicating, they're adjusting, and it looks a lot more like like a professional basketball team practicing, or something like that, where it's not
Yeah.
just my mind did the work of planning and now my body does the work of training. It's like, no, your mind should be engaged in the planning and the execution.
And to that extent, running actually becomes partially a team sport.
Yep, it does.
I find that it's, like that's the hard part is because, you're also changing every day. You mentioned we're not like the same runner for different reasons. And over time we're not the same. So sometimes like you think you've identified a pattern and
Yep.
then you realize later that it's like, oh, it doesn't really work anymore.
Yes.
So it's like you're always, it's almost like you that never stops. And there's basically the only thing that remains constant is that there will always be like kind of a gray zone and you have to sort of navigate it. And I don't know if this was the chapter in the individuation section or if this was the next one in the next pillar, which is challenging. But you had a chapter about being a fox or being a hedgehog.
Yeah.
Can you explain to us why we need to strive to be a fox? I mean, I don't think a lot of us are naturally foxes, but
I
maybe,
guess
we can.
we should describe what are hedgehogs and what are foxes. I
Yeah,
know
maybe
hedgehogs
maybe
are
we should.
prickly animals and foxes are ginger things that run through the woods and catch rabbits, but I don't think that's what we meant.
Yes, yeah, I'm blanking on the name of the philosopher who decades ago, yeah, used like foxes and hedgehogs as avatars for two different types of like intellectual orientations, and then it was popularized in a more recent book, Range by David Epstein, and so hedgehogs know a lot about a little, and
Isaiah Berlin
yes, thank you.
is
Yep,
the philosopher you're looking for.
yes, thank you.
Just quickly read
Um,
your book. Oh.
Yeah, yeah. I wrote the book, don't know what's in it.
Well, I can imagine that you're probably on to the next one, so.
Yeah, this is true. Um, yeah, so yeah, hedgehogs know a lot about a little, and foxes know a little about a lot. And I am a natural fox, so you can probably see my bias
Mm.
in that chapter. So hedgehogs like to take a reductive view of what they're doing. They want to like break down the training into its smallest parts, and focus on the parts. And foxes are more big picture. They're seeing the forest for the trees. And what the evidence shows is that the hedgehog orientate. It's not that one is bad and the other is good. It's like one is better in certain environments and the other is better in others. So the hedgehog orientation, the kind of like seeing the trees and not the forest, that works really well in kind learning environments, and that is where like the rules are clear. There's not a lot of uncertainty. It's like a clean and like simple environment. So hedgehogs, for example, tend to kick butt as chess players. Like chess, we think of it as
All the
complex,
rules are
Hmm.
fixed.
but
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
it's
I
not.
think I think it's complex, but yeah.
But it's really not, like compared to life.
That's true.
It's like, I mean, how many squares are there? How many pieces are there? Like not many. And so yeah, like I mean, you certainly have to you have to have a really great working memory to excel at chess, but it is a clean learning environment. Whereas a complex learning environment would be like starting a business,
Hmm.
where it's just like a lot of uncertainty. The rules are kind of vague and maybe changing on you. And so the question is like, is endurance training a kind learning environment or a wicked learning environment? And I think it's a wicked learning environment. Like there is like, so if you're too much of a fox, I mean, if you're too much of a hedgehog, you try to pretend you know everything. You try to pretend the uncertainty doesn't exist, and then you just like kind of stubbornly persist in a path that just isn't working. Whereas if you have that more of that big picture fox orientation, you're comfortable with uncertainty. You take that as given, and you're not just trying to like brush it to the side or make decisions as if the uncertainty wasn't there. You kind of bake the uncertainty in to your decision making, and that's where I am now. And like as a very experienced fox, I enjoy it. Like there's a ton of uncertainty in developing a chronic illness at age 49 and then losing 3.5 years to that illness, starting over at 52, like at zero, like a completely deconditioned, middle-aged, overweight man with a heart condition that is also attributable to long COVID, you know, but like my body is, I can tell it's starting to come around. And like, I'm still an athlete inside. I'm like, well, I'm going to take every inch my body gives me. And so then the
Hmm.
comeback begins. But I have no idea what the rules are now. Like there is no playbook for what I'm trying to do. And I love it that way
Hmm.
because, like, I mean, am I going to make mistakes? Damn right, I'm going to make mistakes, but that's not how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it as, imagine there are 99 other runners who are in exactly the same circumstances I am in. I just want to do better than the 99.
Hmm.
And I have confidence that I can, because like I feel like I know how to embrace and deal with the uncertainty and make the most of it and kind of figure it out as I go. And so that's like an extreme example of why it really behooves every runner to cultivate their inner fox.
Could it be that the longer the distance gets, the more fox-like you need to be? Because, I feel like a hedgehog can really perform well if you know they're running a 1500s or like 5Ks or something like that, where you know the distance, like
Or a
there's
100K sprint, a 100-meter sprint, sorry.
yeah, because there's
Yeah.
not none
Yeah.
of this, like there's so many things that you don't have to worry about. Like you know, in a 5K and under, like the heat will affect you, but not as much as like if you're running 10K or more. And then there's also like if you're running, half marathon and above, now nutrition becomes a problem, it's or a potential problem. So it's almost like, do you think that, in certain areas like hedgehogs can probably perform equivalently to foxes, but then the longer the
Or
distance.
maybe on rest day, but well, if you talk about training, I guess there's all sorts of other variables as well in
Correct.
play.
Yeah. You anticipated my answer. I think so my answer is yes and no. I would say yes, let's just say like a 800-meter track race or 1500-meter track race. Like, there are fewer variables and therefore there is less uncertainty. But still, if you're a middle distance track runner, you are a lot closer to an ultra runner than you are to a chess player. Like, you're still a distance runner, and almost everything applies. And yeah, there's just so much. I mean, it's really like, how many decisions are you having to make? And it's a lot. Like, take like 1500-meter and mile races. Um, Tactics are supreme in that, and they are very nuanced. And you talk to any high level miler, and they will tell you, like, going into a race, I have to be prepared for anything. Like,
Yeah.
I cannot know how the race is going to play out, and I have to embrace that uncertainty and be able to figure it out as the race unfolds. Like, a great example of that is 1500-meter men's final in Rio de Janeiro in the Olympics in 2016, when American Matthew Centrowitz won.
Hmm.
And like, it was the slowest 1500-meter final in decades. And in those types of races, if you've run them or watched them, you know that, like, when the gun goes off, everyone sprints to the front to get position, because position is so important. But then once you get there, like, it slows down to a jog if it's a championship final,
Yeah.
because yeah. And so you want to position yourself near the front, but nobody wants to lead, because the leader never wins.
Oh.
you know because you're doing more work. So
Mhm.
that's what happened in Rio. Like, the gun goes off, everyone sprints to the front, and Centrowitz, who was one of the favorites, finds himself in the lead. He's like, oh God, I so much would have preferred to be second. And what he does from then on, he just decides to run just fast enough to stay in the lead. And that's why it ended up being such a slow race. He's like, well, I know that I'm, breaking the wind for everyone else. Like, I'm doing more work than anyone behind me, which is bad for my chances of winning a gold medal. So he slows down to a jog, and then everyone else is just jogging behind him, and it's not very entertaining. But as the race unfolds, individual runners start to take flyers and try to, like, well, I don't, like, I'm in ninth place now and we're jogging, so I might as well just try to move to the front now. But every time someone did that, Centrowitz sped up just enough to hold them off. So it was like a game of chicken. It's like, hey, we still have 1,000 meters to go, and you can see I'm going to speed up until you decide it's not worth it. And then you fall back, and that happened like 3 times. And then the last race, everyone is just like winding up, and Centrowitz keeps doing the same thing. He just keeps running just hard enough to stay in front of everyone, and that's how the race ends.
Oh, wow.
He's just one step in front of whoever's second the entire freaking race. And it was brilliant. Like, no one had ever won an Olympic gold medal in that event that way. He came up with a brand new strategy, like, in the moment. Yeah, so there's a great example. Like a fox, I mean, a hedgehog couldn't have done that.
Okay. Okay. So you made your case. So basically,
Mhm.
everybody just needs to strive to be a fox.
Yes, yeah. I mean, like, if
Liz.
you're a natural hedgehog, like, that can be a strength, but it can't be your only strength if you're really gonna, reach the mountaintop.
And I think part of the development is kind of reading these things and going, okay, I can see some of that in myself. So, and becoming conscious of it and sort
Yes,
of being aware of it. And that's the first step, because a lot of it is unconscious.
yes,
And you talked about maybe doing kind of a sports psychology questionnaire to like kind of learn about yourself, which I've found that online they had a freebie, so I did it,
Yes.
uh, which was quite fun.
Yes.
Um, you get some insight, not much, I would say, but some.
Yep.
Um, what I'd like to ask you a little bit about is cognitive reframing.
Hmm.
And I guess this is kind of giving yourself, changing the self-talk conversation with yourself. Is that what cognitive reframing is? Um,
Yes.
I was going to say, can you give us an example? But we've just heard you talk to us about your mentality around running, having had long-term COVID and running from zero again. And I think that's probably an example of cognitive reframing. Somebody could say, "Well, I'm sick. I've got this. I can't do anything about this illness that I've had, that I've got.
Hmm.
Woe is me. There's nothing that can be done, and life's terrible."
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
and I guess cognitive reframing is kind of doing what you've done
Yes.
around that.
Yes.
Is that an example?
It is. Yes.
How do you go about doing that? It seems to me like useful and powerful.
Yep. So cognitive reframing originated with a legendary humanistic psychologist named Albert Ellis. And it's based on the idea that in order to solve any kind of problem or overcome any kind of challenge, you have to accept the reality of it. So like if you are going to like deny reality, you're stuck. So that's the picture. You can't change the picture. Reality is continues to exist whether you acknowledge it or not. But you can change your perspective on reality. It's like the whole half glass full,
Hmm.
glass half full or empty thing. So it really is. It's just a matter of like, all right, given the fact that I'm a runner who's trying to get fitter and perform at a higher level, like what is the most helpful perspective I can take on my present reality? So again, you're accepting reality no matter how harsh it happens to be, but you are also taking responsibility for the freedom you have to shift your perspective on that reality, and you want to do it in a way that's just most helpful to your interests. Like another personal example I can give you was I was training for the 2019 Ironman Santa Rosa, and I developed a shoulder injury that I basically could not lift my left arm overhead, which meant I couldn't use my left arm for swimming. And so I'm six
That's a
weeks out.
problem.
Yeah, so I'm 6 weeks out for an Ironman, and for those who don't know, an Ironman starts with a 2.4 mile open water swim. So swimming is important. Um, and so like that was the reality. The reality was like I've injured my shoulder and I can't use it for swimming 6 weeks out from an Ironman. And one way to look at that would be the catastrophizing. It's like this is terrible. Why did this happen to me? Like now I can't swim, and I don't know what I'm. Yeah, I don't know when I'm going to be able to swim again, and there goes my goal. But for me, and that was my initial reaction. I'm like, no. But then I tried to practice what I preach, and then I reframed it. I said, you know what? I can swim. I just can't swim with my left arm, and swimming was my weakest discipline in triathlon, and I thought this could be an opportunity. I can work on my kick. I have a weak kick, so I can just still go to the pool, still spend just as much time in the pool, and just focus on like working on my kick. And this could actually, and I knew the injury would heal if I just babied it. So I thought, when I'm able to use my left arm again, I could be leveled up as a swimmer. I wouldn't have wished this on myself, but it actually could turn out into an advantage. And I also mixed in some one arm swimming, and I had to breathe on the side I don't prefer to breathe on. So I thought, well,
Hmm.
there's another opportunity. Like I can get better at breathing on my bilaterally, which is really good if you're in open water and you don't know where the current is going to be, and you could be swallowing water, breathing on your preferred side. So yeah, that so it ended up just being a speed bump, honestly. And it largely because of an effort to practice cognitive reframing.
Seems to me though like you're a Jedi master at being able to do it.
I am.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, glass half
Yeah.
full kind of
How do we,
guy.
how how could you teach me to do it a bit better? Yeah, I guess you have to find a
I
gap and
just
pause
did.
in the moment. What?
I just did, Alan.
What by just by yeah.
Yeah, Alan, you just have to follow that example. So
You,
when you break your leg, then
very short story. I was running with quite a few years ago. I was running with a 19-year-old that was going to do their first marathon, and they were training. And and I said to them, "Are you nervous about your marathon coming up?" And she said to me, "Not really. I prefer to think about it as being excited." And I thought,
Hmm.
"God
Yes.
damn you, 19-year-old, you just taught me a lesson." That is fantastic. And I guess that's in a nutshell, that's sort of cognitive reframing.
Yeah.
You've got this buzz in your body, but rather than
Yes.
go, oh, that's negative, that's going to work against me.
Right.
Oh, I'm frightened. You go, wow, that's positive. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited
Yes.
about it.
Hmm.
yeah, sometimes also the first marathon, it's like ignorance is bliss. Because I remember my first marathon, it was such a great experience because I had no idea what it was going to be like to go past
Oh,
32K.
oh,
I
there's
feel
that
like
as well.
you
You only get
develop.
one crack at that though.
Yeah, I know. It's too bad. It's too bad. I wish I could like wipe my brain clean
Yeah.
before every marathon because it's like, I don't know, it's kind of refreshing to not really know what's coming. Anyway, so th this book, before we kind of wrap it up,
Mm.
it's full of tips. It's full of things you can work on. But one of the things that that you mention is that like you need to try one, and you call them disruptors, one disruptor at a time when you're trying to,
Yeah.
make small improvements. So first of all, why? Because I think all runners do this. Like, we do this. I mean, Alan maybe, he doesn't do this as much, but I will have the tendency to want to, you know, try everything, or maybe not everything, but like more than one thing at a time. So let's
Yeah.
say you read a book about nutrition and then you try and increase your protein intake and take more carbs before you run and increase your carb intake and then increase your vegetable intake. And then eventually 3 days later, you're like, I can't eat all this food. I can't keep up with cooking. I can't do this anymore. And you completely give up. So,
Hmm.
so, so why is it, other than the whole overwhelm factor, why is it
Yes.
better to do one thing at a time?
Yeah. It's kind of like it's a sophisticated concept, and I will try to explain it as best I can. But there's a tendency, and this gets back to hedgehog thinking, that like at any given time you have a limiter, like you have a weak chain, a weak link in your physiological chain.
I'm happy to
Um,
be the weak link over here.
um, but that's that's overly simplistic, like, because we're just integrated systems, like, and everything is kind of tied together, and every system within your body impinges and affects others. And so what it amounts to is that, like, at any given level of fitness and development, like, your body is used to performing at a certain level. And when you bring in a new technique, or method or technology that's intended to shore up a weak link and improve your performance, okay, yeah, you're addressing like a specific component of your physiology, but the entire system has to get used to. So let's say it works, right? Like, you just try it, let's just say, like, a new kind of workout, and it increases your VO2 max, and it does it by increasing capillary density in your muscles. Okay, great. You have more capillaries in your muscles, but now you're running at a higher level, and every other part of your body has to get used to that. So it's good to just, like, try one thing at a time, to give your the entire system a chance to level up. And now that is the level you're used to running at. So when you bring in another new technique that to work on a weak link, you get a chance to like for the system to integrate around that disruption. Whereas like if you do like three things that all address like separate weak links at the same time, the whole rest of your body isn't going to be able to make a three-level jump simultaneously. Like, so no matter how many things you try all at one time, you're only going to level up one notch. So it just makes sense to spread them out. I mean, I don't want to etch this in stone and say like
Mm,
never try two things simultaneously.
yeah.
I'm doing it right now. Like I'm experimenting with like Norwegian style threshold interval workouts, and I'm also participating in this like brain training. I'm using this brain training app, and I'm doing those things simultaneously, and my head's not going to explode. But like as a general rule, yeah, it's just it's
Yeah.
best to be like sequential about. I mean, you should absolutely be trying new things pretty much all the time, but just to be focused and sequential about it is, I think, for the best.
And I guess try them for long enough that you can really tell
Yes,
if they've had an effect or
Is that
not,
working
because,
out?
3 days is not enough to see the
right,
results of, better protein intake and more
right,
carbohydrates. So, yeah.
yep,
Yeah, Liz refers to me more trying one thing, one new thing at a time. Mostly that's with me, it's driven by habit forming. So
yes,
it's to make it stick. What I do
yep,
is I only do one thing. You got no distractions. Just drink your protein drink every time that you've done your run. Drink your
hmm
protein drink. And just do that. That's all you
hmm
have to do.
yep,
Anyone can do that. And now it's a habit. Okay, what's the
yep,
next thing? Liz kind of sees me doing that. So okay, for the next 3 months, I'm not changing too much, but I'm going to do these hip
hmm
flexibility, these hip mobility exercises
hmm
every time before a run because I'm old and my hips don't move very well. Um, and we just
Yeah,
do that one
that's
thing.
the next
We make it
thing.
a habit. And then life is not too difficult to enact.
yep.
Doesn't have lots of difficult things. That's a little
So,
different to disruptors.
but before you tell us where listeners can get a copy of the book, maybe you want to also talk about the online course that kind of goes along with the book. Um, is it recommended to do both? Can people just read the book and not do the online course, or is it something that kind of goes together or works together?
Yeah, you could do easily one or the other. So it originated with an online course that I created for 80/20 endurance, and so that one, it's video based. It's a mix of kind of like a TED Talk format with Matt on stage speaking words, and then like more like a master class format, like just like a more intimate, like teaching, voice to camera type of thing. And so it's really well done. We put some money behind the production, and it's pretty much the same material, just like a different format. And I will say the online course has 20 lessons, and but that wasn't the script I wrote for that course. Didn't add up to enough words for a book, so I added 5 lessons to the book. So if you just want more, get the book.
Get the book. Also, the thing is with online courses, like I don't know, I do online courses for things sometimes, and unless you use the knowledge right away, like you almost need to rewatch the course later, or you need to like take
Make
your own
notes.
notes.
Yeah.
Whereas like with this book, well, the notes are made for you, so I guess if you're taking the online course, the book is still useful because you can flip through a book. It's hard to flip through an online course.
We're,
This
we're
is
a bit
true.
biased though. We like books.
I am.
Yeah.
I am also.
And
I
we
am
like
also.
physical copies as well. So we're
Yeah.
probably not as
Yeah, because
eco
you
as
because
we
you
should
can
be.
flip through them, like whereas
Mm.
it's not like the PDF where you have to just try and see those little icons with the pages and figure out which chapter everything was in. Yeah. So what's the best place?
Yeah.
Where can people get a copy of the book if they want it, or the course?
Yes. So the course is available at 8020endurance.com, and just hit the learning tab once you're there. The book, you mentioned at the outset that I have my own little book publishing imprint now, 8020 Publishing. And so I am not only
Hmm.
the author of Chasing Mastery, I am also the publisher, which is cool. But we have a distribution partnership with Simon and Schuster, like a big Goliath in book publishing. So the book is available, as they say, everywhere books are sold: Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Goodreads, all of it.
That's great. And do you want to mention anything that you're up to
Yeah.
now?
Yeah. What are you up to now?
I am operating Dream Run Camp here in Flagstaff, Arizona. It's like a
Oh, yes.
year-round kind of residential, fantasy retreat for runners who just want to come to one of the world's greatest meccas for running and just hang out and get some quality training done and in-person coaching from me. You can learn about that at dreamrun.com.
There's your 3 hour
Perfect.
marathon, Liz. That could be
Yeah,
the
I
next
know.
disruptor you need.
Yes,
I know.
yes.
I need to get my butt down there. But yeah.
Really should.
Yeah. Maybe next year because I'm doing a course at the moment. It's every evening, Monday to Friday from like 4 to 9:30. So, yeah. But next year maybe.
We'll be here.
What about
Okay.
books? What's the next book?
I'm working on one called Dying to Run, which is about my journey
Ah, yes.
through long COVID. Yeah, it's a gripping page turner.
Yeah. You
Sounds
know,
good.
I think for anybody that's had like, that was a runner or is a runner and has faced adversity, those kinds of stories are always kind of inspiring because,
Yeah.
you see that A, you're not alone and B, that like, things can sometimes end up better than you thought they would.
Yep.
But sometimes it takes a lot of time. So,
Here's an
Yes.
example of your cognitive reframing mastery. Yeah. Some people would view it as a sad illness, and you view it as a book publishing opportunity.
Isn't everything?
it is for you. You're just fulfilling 9-year-old Matt's dream.
Yep.
Yep. One book at a
The dream
time.
goes on.
So now we'll give our kind of summaries.
So, our summary for Chasing Mastery: 25 lessons to cultivate your full potential in endurance sports. Well, the book's absolutely chock full of good insights and practical advice that I hope you got some suggestion of that as we talked with Matt. It allows you to, I think, to hold a mirror up to yourself as a runner and ask honest questions that ultimately will lead to improvement opportunities for you in your running. Unfortunately, there are no gimmicks or quick fixes. We'd all like a magic wand and fairy dust, but there isn't any. This is as much about you as a person and how you interact with your running. As we said at the start, it's not really a training book, it's more a personal mastery type thing. I actually took the sports personality questionnaire for fun because they offered, when I went on their site, they offered a free trial. So I took them up on that. And they just ask you a whole bunch of questions. It takes you 15 minutes, and you get some insight into what sort of personality you have as a sports person. Apparently, I'm a borderline confident achiever, which doesn't sound that bad. So I'm not a high-end confident achiever, but I'm just over into the confident achiever bracket.
That sounds like a nice place to be, Alan.
Sounds good to me. And it gives you a little all different little aspects in the questionnaire about what you could work on, where you need to focus more. I'll have to look through it in detail. I only did it yesterday. The book itself is good if you want to work on yourself and get more out of your training. So it's fantastic for that. Well, one of the things that I was surprised, and I should have asked Matt about it, there was no reference list at the end. We heard Matt talking to us about, philosophers and researchers, and so there's loads of kind of research in the book and references in the book, but there's no reference list at the end, so you can't go and look up the references. That's just me as a scientist. Probably you didn't notice that, Liz.
I didn't.
There you
No.
go.
No, I just like I respect Matt's researching ability, so I'm just, 100% on board with whatever he found. So, I guess in true Matt Fitzgerald fashion, this book is very readable with its combination of research-based facts, even though there was no references at the end. like some of this stuff he's quoting
He quotes
people
it
in
as he
history.
goes as well, so you can
Yeah.
look it up, I guess.
Yeah. And he also has personal stories from his coaching experience, as he usually does. Bonus, he actually mentioned Canadian marathoner Cam Levins in one of the stories in the individuation section, which I thought was really fun
Mm.
because I like Cam Levins. I think, yeah,
Yeah, it's
he's
nice to have Canadian
yeah,
representation.
yeah, exactly. And I haven't heard about him very much lately, so it's kind of like, good. He's still, still running, still doing great things. And I love the from principle to practice sections at the end of each chapter. So it's not really like normally chapters will have like a chapter summary, but this is more like an actionable list at the end of each chapter, which is really useful. So basically, you get 25 sort of small actionable lists. It doesn't mean it's everything that's in the chapter, but it gets you started. I mean, I think if you went through the book and you did all the actionable lists at the end of each chapter, you would definitely be closer to mastery at the end. I like that a lot of the chapters, basically gave me permission to stop killing myself trying to follow Alan when I'm not feeling it. Um, yeah, I could just think of, the individuation section. I always kind of have a hard time with that because, Alan and I are kind of the same runners. I mean, in races, we run similar times, but we seem to get there in very different ways. And the problem is like, half the time, maybe a little bit more, Alan Alan does get to the finish line faster, which makes me kind of doubt my choices, It's like, well, maybe if I just pushed harder in the marathon pace workouts and I nailed them more often like Alan always does, I could I would achieve the sub 3 hour. But
I
yeah.
think what the book tells you is you've got to make your own choices.
Yeah.
We can run together, but not always together, maybe. I don't
Yeah,
know.
or run together, but you don't have to be exactly together.
Hmm.
I mean, not for the intervals. I think for easy runs and stuff, then yeah, that's different.
Yeah.
But for an interval, if one person's not feeling it, the other one's feeling great, then it could be that you just kind of spread a little bit further apart. Anyway, for me, it was that, now what I could do is I can say that I'm exercising restraint, which is something that you learn in the individuation section. So the next time that I don't follow Alan because running a pace that I can't handle on the day, I'm going to tell myself to exercise restraint.
It's
I
a much
think,
more positive way of framing it. So it's cognitive reframing as well.
well, there you go.
Instead of
See?
saying, instead of saying, "Oh, I haven't got the energy. I'm not as strong as I need to be," you just say, "I'm exercising restraint because this is not the workout where I have to smash myself to pieces."
Exactly. Who's this book for? So I think the book is for anyone who's looking to get more out of themselves, especially if they've already tried different training plans or think they figured out the training that works for them. So if you're one of those people and you are looking for kind of like the next step, you've tried all the training things. Mastering your sport isn't about the training plan. It's about the execution of training and the execution of race day and just getting closer to your full potential out of yourself.
Good stuff.
Outro?
Is it my turn? I can't remember.
It's always your turn.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Running Book Reviews. A big thank you to the publisher 8020 Publishing, Matt's own publishing house, for providing review copies of the book, and a big thank you to Matt Fitzgerald for spending time with us today. If you'd like to leave us feedback about how we can improve the podcast or want to suggest a book that you'd like us to review in future episodes, please leave us a comment on social media. Don't be shy. We love seeing your comments. On Facebook and Instagram, we are Running Book Reviews, and on Twitter, we are reviews_running. Please also follow us on social media. You'll then find new episodes releasing, or you can just subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming platform. If you've been listening to us for a while, here's some ways that you can help us out if you want to. If you're enjoying the podcast, spread the word. Send a copy, share a link, basically get our podcast out there to more people. Or you can leave us a review on Apple Podcast, or you can rate us out of 5 stars on Spotify. Well, you can also get to our Buy Me a Coffee page. Go to buymeacoffee.com, where you can see a few extras, blogs, outtakes, photographs. And if you want, you can push a little button and to buy us a coffee, but you don't have to. But we appreciate it if you do. That's all for today from Running Book Reviews. Bye for now.
Bye.